At 4 years old, I noticed that there was this presence. Shamanic work is the ability to unify with the elements first and foremostly. Some people think shamanism is pagan, definitely not in my mind. Space holding is to see their divinity and their innocence, not to condemn and judge. Who are we to do that? An awakened person is always looking to see, what can I give? Because it's feeling its own wholeness. An unawakened person is looking, what can I take from this situation? Our chakras, it's not something by visualizing a color on your chakra that's going to change it. It's about walking a path of harmlessness. You see so many people halfway up the mountain had a little bit of spiritual insight, and now then they think that it's their job to tell everybody what to do and how to do it. And harmony will only come when you're aware of your energy body and the power of your prayer.
The golden age.
Yes. On the earth, a long time ago, was a place called Shambhala. Telepathy isn't guessing what's in somebody's mind. And telepathy isn't going to some psychic reader that's going to try and tell you your future, because that's between you and God. Anybody who's doing that is actually putting a lower psychic energy on you.
How do you merge or integrate astrology with the work that you do?
Firstly, I'm not here to predict your future. The minute somebody thinks, oh, I'm such a good healer, that's a problem. Because that means that we're trying to take credit for God's love. Shall I share with you my first experience of wake up? Like proper. And I went, oh my God, you're my mother from the Pleiades.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Decoded Journeys. So for today's episode, I have a very special guest. I have been to some of her talks and one retreat actually. So I'm super excited for her to be on. Welcome, Rita.
Hello, it's beautiful to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. How are you today?
I'm really good, actually. I feel that when I came out of the place where I'm staying, I just feel the sun on my face. I feel the deepest connection. And I'm really getting to know Dubai and enjoying it each time I come, more and more honouring what is being created here. Even this whole place where we're in right now, the fact that it's a wellness studio, and just seeing how much cutting edge technology there is here around wellness. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So did you start your journey in wellness?
Well, my journey's always been about noticing and feeling energy, electrical energy. I will give you an example of that. At 4 years old, I lived in Ealing in London. I was born in London. In fact, I'm born to a Hindu Indian father and a Lebanese mother in this life. And I went to knock for a child next door, and I had an ice lolly. And they said to me, you can't come in because their children they'll all want ice lollies. So I went back outside and I stood in front of their gate, and I noticed this really strong energy coming from the earth underneath my feet. And I had this sense that if I was to stand in absolute stillness, that I could hover on the electromagnetic field and just raise, like levitate, to stand on the cushion of electricity. And that was the beginning of such strong awareness. I've always had this deep sense of awareness. And in terms of my journey that led to my path of work, even though when I was young, I really wanted to be a fashion designer and had a successful clothing business, and still have actually a beautiful, conscious, ethical clothing business, I was always deeply compassionate. I would cry about things like apartheid, slavery, and the separation that I saw. I would study, even at 11 years old, about the injustice of what happened in Second World War and in Auschwitz. I mean, it really, I would cry every day just wondering how could humanity be so unkind to each other. It was very deep for me. So I've always had this thread of awareness. I wouldn't say I was awake, but I noticed that there was this presence that I didn't even recognize was the omnipresence, but I could always have access when I was in stillness. And I would always notice energy vortexes in my body and around me. And even the transmission of how plants and trees were communicating. But what it led me to has been 3 decades of working in the field of transformational work. And since my partner died from a road traffic accident, when my youngest daughter, I say my youngest child because she's my only daughter, when she was 5 months old, he died from this accident. And somehow I felt permission in that moment to live my life exactly how I want it every day, because I didn't take it for granted that I may not be given tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so that just brought me to something that was so incredible, which has been a path of transformational shamanic work, where I'm supporting people to meet themselves at the places where they've avoided pain, grief. And, the avoidance of pain and grief, as you know, leads to addiction and just disassociation, when every human being on this earth is really yearning to be at one with the one that we call God. So I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for everything that's ever happened in my life. And I definitely feel I've walked through the fire a lot.
Yeah. Tell me more about the shamanic work that you do and space holding.
Shamanic work. Well, what shamanic work is the ability to unify with the elements first and foremostly. So some people think shamanism is pagan. It definitely not in my mind, not where I've come from. It's finding that point of Christ consciousness within everything. And Christ consciousness is universal. It's not Christian. It's also, in Islam, in every path, they would acknowledge the light of the heart of the sun, the source of all creation. So whether they're calling it Christ consciousness or Krishna consciousness, it's that frequency of union between spirit and matter. So shamanism is the union between spirit and matter, and whether it's the spirit of the fire, the spirit of the water, the spirit of the air, the spirit of the earth. It's about unification with all the elements in order to call everything that you've disassociated with back into alignment, to bring it to the Creator, to bring your life as an offering to the Creator. So that's how I love to work, is to not in a left brain formula where it's following something. This is the most important thing, because I'm not teaching a method that now you're learning a new method to follow somebody else and this system. It's not like that. It's about holding a stillness, holding presence for people to come back to feel themselves and to really understand their own divinity that is eternal, beyond this incarnation within this dream. And it's to cut through, to deeply align to the source of existence. It's so sacred. I mean, that's just a glimpse.
Yeah. And I like how you mentioned holding, because I kind of had a definition in my head for space holding, but when I experienced your space holding and your team, it changed. Like it became so much deeper and it expanded. So I wanted you to talk more about what does space holding mean to you?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, first let's just talk about the fact that all over this earth, in every tradition, people are being inspired and moved to gather to pray around an altar, whether it's not an altar that's dedicated to Islam or Christianity or any one path or religion. So let's just, on this level, I'm going to just mention that, I've done 32 years studying within a field of ageless wisdom and esoteric psychology. And what's so beautiful about that is it shows the path of beauty in every lineage, in every tradition. So from the Sufi side of Islam to the Quran side, from traditional Christianity to the more higher elevated levels of Christ consciousness, from the traditional Mahayana Buddhism all the way to the Tantrayana Buddhism, and then the whole of the Vedas, and it encompasses Judaism, everything. There's nothing outside of ageless wisdom. It's all the paths that took us to connect to the oneness, the intelligence of God within. So space holding is something that's deeply needed because humanity is turbulent, and it's always been turbulent, but it's more turbulent than ever, since COVID in particular. And since, the way that the planets are at the moment has moved a lot of people to be in a place of purification of their places where they feel separate, lonely, and then there's this false veneer where people are scrolling, distracting, trying to placate this sense of dis-ease within themselves. Space holding is when we come back to feel our own inner wholeness that isn't interrupted by the mind or the turbulent emotions, that we can feel our connection so deeply to the source of existence that there becomes an overflow of loving compassion that isn't in judgment of anything or any one person. And to be able to sit in stillness and embodied presence, to hold space for another to feel themselves without telling them how to be, without telling them that they're not good enough. Because if you think about it, Rashid, think about every single child and every single parent. Somehow, most parents will transmit their neurosis to the child to make that child feel that they're not enough. We're born whole from God. And suddenly you come into a family and then your parent can't meet you with presence because it's in its levels of insecurity or its busyness or it's transmitting what it received from its own parents. Or it's in some polar opposite defense mechanism to the parent saying, I'm never going to treat my son like this because I was treated like this. But still, it's going to in its reaction, not generally be in the soft presence that allows this beautiful unfurling for a child to feel really, really good about themselves. Because the nature of a mother and father is to somehow correct and tweak. And that leads to deep levels of insecurity, let alone if I was to go into the education system and how that develops, engenders more neurosis to any one person. And then as the child goes up and is a teenager now, going into adulthood, then it's got this enormous levels of marketing at that person to keep selling something to that child, that person, that young adult, to say, oh, you need this, you need that. And then that leads to a deeper level of neurosis, which each human being has got, which is comparing themselves, judging themselves, berating themselves. And this, really turns the energy anti-clockwise within. And that, our wake-up process is to come into a deep level of alignment and become aware of these negative programs that we've been imbued with. And every person has got this level of negative programming, and then we have to unravel that, clear it, but not by suppressing it and not by trying to push it down. Yeah. So it's such a deep thing. So holding space is coming, like being in our own deepest alignment with the source of existence, empty and innocent, knowing our innocence, knowing our divinity, and then holding that level of presence for another without judgment of where they are in their wounding, and knowing that behind all that coating that they have, there's deep innocence. So it's not trying to change anybody. That's so important. Shamanic work's not trying to change. It's just helping to support somebody to call themselves back to where they're all over the place.
Yeah.
That just gives a glimpse into it.
Yeah, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And when you say that, like our programming turns something clockwise?
Yes,
like,
anti-clockwise. So we have energy gateways inside of ourselves and that actually inform our body. So, in the Chinese, they are masters of acupuncture. Mm-hmm. So that is the connection of understanding how the meridian system connects to the endocrine system and the organs. And in the meridian system, there's 1,000 vortexes of light. And in the Oriental ways of understanding the body, there's also 21 minor chakras and 7 major chakras. And these chakras store the merit that you accumulate by your good deeds, words, and actions that actually are part of your soul.
Yeah.
So imagine, I know that in Islam, you don't talk so much about reincarnation because the Prophet didn't talk about that.
Yeah.
But in different systems that I have worked with, and also because when I was very young, I knew that I had lived before, and by 11, I really strongly knew that I had had Tibetan lives, and am very much recognized by Tibetan lamas and Tibetan monks.
Yeah.
And that was such a strange thing because I had a Hindu father and a Catholic Lebanese mother, so it was like, wow, I really wanted to go back and be a Buddhist nun by the time I'm 11. So what chakras are, we have a base chakra that connects into the earth. It helps us to interface with the earth. But if it isn't connected because we do not feel safe, then we're in struggle and survival, and we're in disconnection to the earth. And actually most of humanity are, which is why instead of walking in harmony with the earth, we chuck rubbish.
Yeah.
And yet, in these Arabian worlds with shifting sands, there is such stability because compared to most countries, you all know that you've got a meal for tomorrow and that you have got substance underneath you. So that's when your base chakra is connected into the earth. Most of humanity don't know how they're paying their rent next month.
Yeah.
And so there is points where we have to align ourselves. Our sacral chakra, that's just 4 fingertips below the belly button, is the storehouse of our sexual energy that is here for using for divinity as creative life force energy, inspiration, and healing light. But if it's when the throat chakra is going anti-clockwise with negativity and criticism, it will push down onto the sacral chakra. And then the sexual energy, instead of coming up to give to God, passing through the heart and being at one with the one, it goes into negative anti-clockwise materialism always thinking you need this new car, these new trainers, this new this to make you happy. Or unfortunately, it goes into debauchery, addiction to pornography, and absolute misuse of sexual energy. And so our awakening is about all of us becoming at one with the one, and our energy centers radiating light rather than sucking light. Because in my understanding from esoteric psychology and ageless wisdom, an awakened person is always looking to see, what can I give? Because it's feeling its own wholeness in every situation. Yeah. Actually, your partner feels that. Like, she has that outpouring. Like, I see her energy always thinking, what can I give? What can I give in this situation? That really symbolizes somebody in their awakening. An unawakened person is looking, what can I take from this situation? It's like a lunar sucking of energy. Yeah. So our chakras are like essential to understand, and it's not something by visualizing a color on your chakra that's going to change it. It's about walking a path of harmlessness, impeccability, making the choice of what would love do in this moment. And that's universal. It's beyond a religion. It's just universal. It's basic goodness. It's the intelligence of God consciousness.
So you would say, like, if someone listening would want to, would you call it realigning, or would you just...
Yes, you could call it aligning to the source. So it doesn't matter what your religion belief system is. Yeah. You stay with that. Nobody's asking you to move outside of your path. Yeah. But what I would say is, first and foremostly, take a vow within yourself to walk a path of harmlessness. That means to now observe, if you go home to be with your mother and you find yourself irritated, agitated, and trying to shut her out, then you know you've got some work to do. Because harmlessness would be being in acceptance of how she is, and then having the compassion to be in presence. That comes back to the space holding. Yeah. For people, because, everybody's trying to do all this spiritual work, but actually you've got to apply it into your family. Yeah. That's when you can see if you're really doing it, or are you just in your delusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the way to align our chakras is just by embodying that
It's
presence.
about making a choice to be harmless. But firstly, to be harmless, you have to be honest and see what your own programming is in terms of what you inherited. Because think of it like this. You are pure consciousness. You are the light of spirit that is eternal. And you're already at one with God. Okay, that's the truth. But then you're incarnated into a body, so you inherit the DNA of your mother and your father and their mothers and fathers and their ancestors. So now you've got this density lens of matter to look through. But that matter has got 7 gates, from your brow center, your crown, your heart, your throat, your entire body. And each one, like if you're looking, most people are looking through the lens of their solar plex, where all the duality is and where they're in fear, in fact, terror, because they don't believe that there's a divine plan. Yeah. So how to align is by exploring, this is what I do on my trainings, is to hold the space for people to journey inwards, shamanically journey into their body, to understand that this too is a temple that needs purification, to open the winds and the channels so we can become hollow as a flute. The Taoists would call this becoming this clear, lucid light within the Tao. Hearing, being at one with God, that you hear what the Creator is telling you, inspiring you to do, and how to say that kind thing to that person. Yeah. And for it to become natural, not even contrived. So it's to align yourself, first to come into stillness, then to observe your mind. And when we do observe our minds, we realize our minds constantly are finding fault. And then we recognize that's an impurity. And then we think, oh, wait, how come, who is the one that's recognizing the mind is impure? What is this observer? This observer is the place of your eternal being that's watching. It's the divine witness. And the more that you rest in the divine witness rather than the one that's taking somebody's upsetness personally to you, because most people, as they focus here, they're constantly irritated, agitated, upset, and taking it personally in separation.
Yeah.
So our maturity, our evolution, our spiritual evolution, which is what esoteric psychology is not the study of the mind, it's the study of somebody's spiritual evolution, to understand where they are in the picture of the whole. And then to just really train yourself to rest as the divine witness, watching and being in the non-dual place of not forming a judgment opinion, because it's much bigger than we can know. And if you think about what is God like, God is the quality that allows people to have eternity to develop themselves.
Yeah. I love that explanation. I wanted to tap into something you mentioned when I asked about space holding as well. You mentioned clearing, but without suppressing.
Yeah.
Also, something that I faced personally when learning about clearing dense energies and all of that was a lot of bypassing. I faced that personally and denial.
Yes.
So what would you say about that?
This?
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So bless your heart, because I would say that firstly, let's address the people that would not, the spiritual bypass type of energy. It's because the part that cannot bear conflict doesn't want to create discord. So first, to acknowledge your innocence of the part that doesn't want to create more discord, because you have probably been around that. So it takes time to know how to eloquently and skillfully bring awareness to something that's out of integrity in a situation or with another, without then having to receive that person's hate towards you and being able to manage it.
Yeah.
So it takes mastery and it takes time to be able to do that skill. You see so many people halfway up the mountain, as they say, who had a little bit of spiritual insight and a bit more awareness to themselves. And now then they think that it's their job to tell everybody what to do and how to do it. So I feel our Creator is so profoundly gracious that it gives us the space for self-realization. Sometimes it isn't your job to address where something's out of integrity, but to note it. And if it's somebody that, for instance, constantly would be trying to draw you into a conversation or a situation where they want you to condone their, is it okay for me to say the word bullshit on here? Yeah. Okay. Their bullshit. Because a lot of people want to draw you into their battle or their victimization. And if you then, in fact, most friendships are based on that. Your friends, knows that you're going to be in their pity party for that day. And that's a suck of energy. And the more you wake up, the more you start to see these type of dynamics and go, I don't even want to. But then if I tell them, they're just going to be heartbroken or angry or start, and all rows actually come from this type of thing. So a skillful way is to, for a moment, remove yourself if you haven't got the skill to be able to communicate it without creating that energy that you don't want. Like a good skillful way to communicate something is to say, I'm witnessing something that I've been feeling increasingly uncomfortable with, but I don't know if you would like me to share it or not. But if I share it, I want you to know that I am sharing this because I love you and I'm not judging you. But tell me if you think it would be valuable to you and would you want my insight? And it is only my opinion.
Yeah.
And then if that person says, yes, I really would like you to share with me. And then you need to probably set aside 2 hours because the ego part of them is going to want to tell you their story and justify it and draw you further into it. So a lot of those types of situations, for me, I have to think, do I have the time and energy to give that person so that they can go in, or do I ask them, do they want to book a session to do the work? Because it takes so much energy to be in somebody's process in that way.
Yeah.
Mainly the way that I personally work is I will go and pray for them or chant and just be kind and loving. Let's take an example for a parent with a teenage child. I've had 4 of them, by the way. They're all grown up now. But, that part of the teenager, and think about when you were a teenager or I was a teenager. The teenager is a bit like the Luciferic spirit that is saying, talk to the hand God. I am not interested in what you have to tell me about me. I want to be here to do my own thing. Every human has got that in their nature. And this is what we're here to harness and to transform until we as human beings become so surrendered to say, Creator, I would like to be here to do your will and for you to dwell within this sanctuary, my body to be a sanctuary for you, to dwell, to lead me, direct me with humanity. But that is definitely not the place of our teenage self, which is like, get lost, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
I want to be in blame, I want to be angry. I definitely want to take be the victim.
Yeah.
So that teenage part wants you to join in the battle with them. And the more familiar we are with another person, the closer we are, the more they'll think that they've got the right to do that with you.
Yeah.
Unless they are really awake and really working with their stuff. So even with most couples, a lot of this, they will hide that from the public, but underneath it is a feud and a power struggle and massive resentment, which is one of the reasons I love working with couples to help them to come into harmony. And harmony will only come when you're aware of your energy body and the power of your prayer.
Yeah.
Did I answer the question? I might have got lost on that
No, you
one.
did. You did at the beginning, yeah.
Okay.
But I love that you mentioned that the way you work is through prayer or chanting.
Yes.
I wanted to ask, what is prayer to you?
It's a beautiful question. Thank you. Prayer to me, first and foremostly, is humility and gratitude to come back to that at one-ment with the ultimate of all divinity, the intelligence that moves the planets in their orbits and grows each tree and every species of flower and all the animals, and is the great spirit to connect. So first, before I can go into the prayer, I have to explain my relationship to the Creator. To be able to bear witness, even within what I consider this whole entire life, this simulation, to be a dreamscape for us to develop ourselves in. But even within this, every single different type of flower, the roses and the orchids and the luster and their light, and then the eyes of the children and all the different animals and the fishes and the birds, just to feel God's consciousness through the entirety. Not to mention the gift of the sky, and the way that the clouds pass. I know you don't have so many here, but just constant beauty for us to see. Like the kingdom of heaven, to me, is here, but it's not seen until this eye is open. And this eye will only open when we've come to at one-ment with the duality and we've given ourselves in entirety to God. So my prayer begins at the place where I recognize that me, Rita, the ego, really longs to be in absolute union with the divinity of my Father, Creator, Mother, Creator, and that their relationship is where I take rebirth. So through my prayer, I'm always like asking to deepen, to become emptier of me, so that more of God consciousness can come through me, that I can be enveloped and also feel on a frequency level energy being directed through me to pray for others. And I sometimes am an intercessor for others, because I recognize a lot of people don't know what to ask for themselves. And they're lost and they forget to pray. So even for my children, I'm consistently holding a prayer for them to be at one with the Creator, that in this lifetime, in this body, that each one of my children comes back into the at-one-ment, that they unveil their own sacred truth, to know that gift of life itself, and to really know that they could open fully to the words don't have words to describe that unified field at one with the one, with our Father Creator. And prayer for me could be, just before my mother died. She died on December the 1st. She really had a hard time. She had polio as a child. She had been in hospital since the 5th of August, and she'd been in ICU twice with heart failure and all sorts of conditions. And I had to go to Kenya. I was running a retreat in Kenya. And the day before I flew back, I was on the sea, and I went into a state of glory, of feeling like this electric fire, Holy Spirit opening from the sky, pouring through me. And I sat on my own, and I was just in this very sacred moment. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to ask for something really strong in this prayer. And I said, Creator Spirit, I really am, if it's okay to ask this, is it possible that my mum can leave her body as soon as possible? Because it was no longer enjoyable. Her body had packed up. She couldn't walk. She couldn't go to the toilet. Everything was gone. It was a very horrible circumstances, and she was suffering every day. And I just didn't know if it was possible to ask this, but I said, if it's possible for her to no longer have to carry the struggle of this body, and to be to come home to you, and is it please possible that I could be with her? I really want to hold her in her time of passing. And I never have made a prayer like, can somebody leave their body?
Yeah.
And then I get to Heathrow Airport, I put the correct SIM in the phone, and suddenly all these tumble of messages from my sister and my daughter saying, Mum's going to die very, very soon. She's going to die today. Get here as quickly as possible. And I was the power of attorney or whatever. And so the hospital was talking to me in between, and I'm driving as quickly as possible. And I was able to be with her for her last 7 hours. And I felt that level of prayer held. And then another example, I've seen so many miracles with prayers, but when my oldest son was deeply, deeply lost and for years in addiction, it was really painful for me to watch that as a mother. And then when I realized, the more I journeyed into him to feel what is it that he needs, and then I realized, oh my gosh, he really wants to feel love by a partner. And I started to pray for that. And within months, he met the woman that and he's in his 40s, his early 40s, and he met the woman that he's getting married to, they just miraculously, because I found that place of that level of the prayer of what it is. So often I will pray for people to be in harmony. People used to pray for me because they saw me struggle as a single parent. and always, never feeling security around finances. I've had friends of mine pray around sacred fire to pray that I didn't have to worry about money again. Now, I'm not quite in that. I don't worry about it anymore. But it's not like I'm a very wealthy woman or something like that, but I stopped worrying. And prayer for our friends is what we're here for. That's what I really respect about the Buddhist monks. They renounce everything. They don't own anything. They're there to pray for humanity. They chant for humanity every day, all the time, for the benefit of all beings. And my life is dedicated to that, in that way, to be here for the dedication and benefit of all beings.
I feel like sometimes I underestimate the power of prayer. So thank you for reminding me.
Yeah. It's so powerful.
So I attended your talk last week and you talked a lot about the Golden Age.
Oh, yes.
Can you dive more into that?
Yes. So it's since being a child, before I began a study about the Golden Age, because I had a Hindu grandmother, a Hindu father, and I went to a Catholic school which said, if you didn't believe in Jesus, you wouldn't get into heaven. I made it my business to very deeply study the Old Testament and the New Testament of the Bible. I was so interested to see, because I needed to debate with the nuns, because I really understood reincarnation from every reason. And so I studied the New Testament, which is all about revelation and the ultimate marriage of the union of the bride and the Christ. That's the glory point within the New Testament. And then when I was in my teens, I was very interested in reggae. I love reggae. I still love it. And that took me to go and study with the Rastas and how they believed and saw life. And then I thought, I'm going to start seeing things outside of just the Catholic way of looking, and then went to the Baptist churches to understand their way. And little by little, I began something called an ageless wisdom study, which is really deeply honoring all the paths, all the traditions, all the planes of consciousnesses, and what they see as the ultimate of humanity's evolution, including quantum physics, by the way. And began to understand that, for instance, there's different ways to look at, in the Hindu tradition of the Vedas, that there's the Kali Yuga, and then the Tretiya Yuga and the Satya Yuga. Satya Yuga is the age of truth. And they would look at and say that we're right at the end of the Kali Yuga. Some Hindus would say, because there's debates on the cycles of time, excuse me, some Hindus would say that we're not at the end of the Kali Yuga, it's another 180,000 years. Some say, no, it's just ended now. Yeah. But the Kali Yuga, for instance, is the understanding that as humans, we've gone through a period of incarnating the devil and the angel within us at once. And actually, I think all the monoistic religions actually also see that we've got the light and the dark within.
Yeah.
And the most beautiful way, there's two ways to understand the Golden Age, the coming Golden Age. I mean, it's spoken about in the Bible of that time of 1,000 years of peace after Christ comes. And it's probably spoken about in the Quran in some way too. But the way that really touches me and that I'm very dedicated to is something called the colored chakra lineage, which the Dalai Lama teaches, and also a lineage called the Janang lineage of Tibetan Buddhism. And they talk about it. It might be really nice for your viewers of this podcast that you actually put a picture of the Kala chakra. I'll send one to you because it's a wheel of time and it's a transmission of extraordinary beauty. It's a mandala, basically.
Yeah.
And the way that they talk about the coming golden age is to understand that on the earth, a long time ago, was a place called Shambhala that was in Siberia, where the people they became an enlightened society. They came into everything I'm pointing to today in this conversation, integration, where the Great Mother's energy has traveled to in union to be with one with the Father. And that you become reborn in your innocence, in divinity as their child, rather than your mother-father child. Yeah. That now you're the child of God again. Okay, that's one way to look at it. They wouldn't probably describe it like that, but it's what a Kundalini wake-up really is. But to become an enlightened society, you have to have purified what we call the beast, or that Luciferic spirit, internally. In other words, we have to stop judging everybody else and judging ourselves, stop creating conflict, and to walk the light of harmony. It means that your base chakra is now open and you become a conduit for heaven to come through you.
Yeah.
That is what a master is. And that is what we're all working towards. So imagine in Shambhala on earth, in Siberia, there was these people who, under the leadership of what's called the Kalki king, came into this, and they were also from different religions and traditions. They weren't all Buddhist at that time. They came together, and it's not like in Buddhism, by the way, they don't expect somebody who was, say, Muslim or Christian to change their religion. What Buddhism is to come to your self-realized nature, no matter what you are. You could still be a Buddhist, still be Islamic, for instance, or any path. So these people came into deep self-realizations, spatial awareness, and an embodiment of divinity. And their energy fields are so much more translucent. They feel energy. You know, lots of them go into these sacred mudras and feel energy passing through them, like you would see maybe a martial artist or a Qigong master.
Yeah.
They're because they're being moved by the Tao, the energy just passes through them and their whole expression is geometric beauty. And then, because they were so radiated and so much light, there was an enormous amount of hatred towards them. So they actually ascended on the inner planes, and then Shambhala became manifest in another location, which they say is the center of Mount Meru, the center of the universe. And this place is encircled by an iron fence and snowy mountains, and it's on an 8-petaled lotus. And in it are 960 million cities of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that are all highly self-realized in this way that I'm speaking of, that they've come to the center of their at-one-ment with the source of all existence and creation, and they live in absolute fulfillment, and there's no need for money. And there's no need for heating and cooling. And there's perfect lotus groves and everything's just exquisite because their nature is exquisite. And so they are like a sister, I can't call it a planet because it's a plane of resonance, radiating and inspiring humanity to come into this level of self-realization so that we, this lineage of the Janang lineage, talk about by 2030, that humanity is going to go through something very vast And it's so interesting. We could just mention 3-eye atlas and all of these different shifts of consciousness that are waking humanity up.
Yeah.
You know, including like everything along this earth is to fast track us into our awakening right now. And they're transmitting from Shambhala an energy to inspire humanity through their good deeds, words, and actions, through the seeing that every human being on this planet is our brother and our sister, and taking the vow of harmlessness that we want the best for every being on this planet. This is going to bring us into the golden age, where we become telepathic. Now, I've studied telepathy for a long time. I feel very telepathic, by the way. And telepathy is very different to that lower psychic energy. Telepathy isn't guessing what's in somebody's mind. And telepathy isn't going to some psychic reader that's going to try and tell you your future, because that's between you and God, and it's being co-created in each moment. Nobody could do that for you. Anybody who's doing that is actually putting a lower psychic energy on you. Telepathy is a purity that arises through your harmlessness that renders you empty but connected to the light of your soul, which is the accumulation of merit, good deeds, words, and action of everything that you are, all your lifetimes. And it's made of electric fire. It's an enormous amount of energy to integrate inside you. And what it is to become into this golden age, as at the dawning of, is that because you cannot have telepathy without transparency. So in this new time, we're coming into a time where we have to purify ourselves to not have anything to hide. And as we know, like everything that is coming from the darkness, selfishness, black magic, manipulation, misuse of energy is being exposed. And there's a lot.
Yeah.
I just read an article that horrified me about, it's like these Ugandan women were talking about how men in this country will pay to basically all rape her and then poo on her. I'm sorry to bring that into this conversation. That's the polar opposite of the golden age. But it's being exposed. This level of darkness is being exposed. And actually, as I've been here and I look at the way Dubai is built and the beautiful walkways and the parks and the trees that are being planted and everything that's being seeded here, I really feel this will be a gateway for the golden age in this land in the future. But we're all in the purification process, every single one of us. And personally, wherever I go, I'm always putting prayers to support humanity, having the courage to face their pain, face their own shadow, face all the conditioned imprints that were not love, that we've taken on. So you know the difference between a Buddha and a Bodhisattva. A Buddha has come to their enlightened state. They're self-realized. They're at one with the one. A Bodhisattva is somebody who renounces that enlightened state to take incarnation, to come into where the darkness exists. Maybe that they have to take on being violated as a child, to purify it, to have compassion, to forgive it, and to close the door of darkness. That is a bodhisattva. To be beaten, to be abused, and then transform it all back into love. Praying for the transgressors, praying for the violators, that they may incarnate into a family where they're really held with love, and that these qualities of sucking energy get purified. So the golden age, which you could also talk about in astrology. In astrology, there's the age of Pisces, the age of Aquarius. So we've just come through a 2,000-year period where in esoteric psychology and esoteric astrology, they say when Jesus asked to be baptized by John the Baptist in the water, that symbolized the age of Pisces, the purification of the emotional body. And he humbled himself to God to be cleansed of his emotions, of what he inherited. And now in the age of Aquarius, that also, in esoteric psychology, they talk about the 7 great rishis, the 7 solar lords, coming from the great bear, from the plow. And I don't know if you know this, but those 7 stars that we see in the shape of a saucepan and the handle in the sky span across 7 solar systems. And they correspond to the 7 chakras. And that each of these qualities connect to the 7 colors of the rainbow and the 7 notes of the scale. And they all have a quality. So the last age, the age of Pisces, was the age of idealism and devotion. So the highest attainment you could have got to in the last 2,000 years was to become reverent, because it was the age of idealism and devotion. So we devoted to the guru or the teacher outside of ourselves, and we didn't have a direct connection to the creator. Well, we're in a new time now. The age of Aquarius is the age of the purification of the sacral chakra, because now it's the energy of the 7th ray coming from the 7th solar lord, which basically is the energy of cosmic divine order and ceremonial white magic. And this brings us into the age of transparency and telepathy in the age of Aquarius, where we start, instead of being in this self-centered selfishness and looking to see what we can take, we feel the brotherhood of man, and we look to see how we can improve and uplift our community. Not in that way of becoming like a clique or a tribe, but understanding that we have to become in harmony with the community. That's going to bring us into an enlightened society. Because think about it, if you were even to think about your group of friends, or if anybody watching this podcast, think about, even with our best friends, even with close friends, you see their shadows, you see their foibles. And distrust is rampant in us until we have purified our view to really be able to see each other in the highest light. But we can't do that till we have brought ourselves with humility to say, Creator, I'm so sorry for all the ways I've turned away from you. Please open me, hold me so that I can stay connected to you, and purify me so that my view can be pure. That's the biggest thing. That's what Tibetan Buddhism is actually based on, is the ability to see with purity, and that purity not to be a spiritual bypass, to be able to cut through the duality and the wound that's being displayed by the person, to see their divinity and their innocence, not to condemn and judge. Who are we to do that? So we've all got a lot of work to do, but the fact we can even have this conversation means it's closer than it's ever been before. So that's just a glimpse into what the golden age will be. Time for no need for money. Now that's interesting. So again, when a person awakens to become a conduit for God consciousness to come through, where their brow centers open and they're able to witness the good, the true, and the beautiful, all they want to do is to become an outpouring, a giving. And when enough of us are in that space, it's like the way that we are in this achievement-orientated, goal-orientated, looking to build an empire, it becomes empty. All those people with millions and billions, they don't know what to do to make themselves happy. The only thing that can make themselves happy is to benefit other people. Yeah. That's the truth. That's what will give us a sense of deep satisfaction. So that's what the awakening is. And what is happening and how we will come closer to a golden age is the more people look to see, okay, it's time to give back. How can I'm in a position of power, how can I benefit more people? And I'm so grateful because in my life, I work with politicians and people in powerful positions, royalty in powerful positions who are awakening and looking to see what can I give back. And it's happening all over this earth. It's happening. But when we look through the eyes of duality, and I know a lot of even my spiritual friends in COVID times fell into conspiracy theories. Not that most of them are possibly and probably correct, but probably very exaggerated. There's truth in them. But to put your frequency, put your awareness into a frequency in a narrow bandwidth to do with fear and us and them, the dark and I'm good, no, that is not going to support us. There's only one way through this, and this is what I teach in my Ageless Wisdom Shamanic training and in my Advanced Space Holders training, how to be present with what is. How to be present with what is. How to bring your unification with the God consciousness to the situation, because that's where white magic happens, not by us planning a thing. It happens because we deep into that at one moment, and bringing presence actually opens gates, opens sacredness to unfold. And imagine when more than 144,000 people are doing this. It's just growing. In this last 30 years, I've been on a path that I'm always in conversations like this, witnessing people's families change. Everything change when they come home to themselves. First, we have to face ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned 144,000. Why that number?
I think it's a number that's come up a long time, because I think, if I remember correctly, in the Bible, I think it was talked about that when 144,000 people come to this point of awakening, then it's like a 100 monkey syndrome. Do you know the 100 monkey syndrome? No. Oh, it's such a nice one. So there were like monkeys on different islands. And when one monkey learned how to crack a coconut open with a stone, possibly, then suddenly, and then more monkeys on that island, then suddenly the realization, the telepathic thing happened to the monkeys on another island. So it's called the 100 monkey. After 100 monkeys did this. So, and I see that there's a wave of consciousness going around. Did you know, Rashid, that the Earth itself takes 26,000 years to get to the center of the Milky Way, the galactic center? Do you know that we're just there now?
I did not know that.
Yeah. So I've only mentioned like the Hindu prophecy or the Tibetan, the Buddhist prophecies and the Bible, because I can't speak with eloquence about the Quran or other traditions particularly, but I will say that the Native Americans, First Nation people definitely have the prophecies of the Golden Age. And also there is something called the Condor Eagle prophecy where they say that when the condors of the South of Americas fly in harmony with the eagles of the North of the Americas, then people of all nations will sit around the same altars all over this earth and pray together, sing together, and want the best for each other. So for us to come into a golden age is all about the ability to want the best for every single human being on this earth without exception. And I walk a prayer on this earth that on my watch, and I'm 62, but on my watch in this lifetime, I am praying that every human develops the level of generosity. Instead of always buying those coffees from Starbucks or something, that we can all donate generously to the water charities on this earth to ensure that there's clean water for every woman, child and man on this earth, and enough food for every woman, man on this earth, and shelter. Because collectively, we've got the power to do this. You and I, we are, like if we think, oh, somebody else is going to do it, and that's you giving your power away to the other. For me, it's like we need to be the change that we want to see, to be a living example. And that the golden age comes through our own impeccability.
Yeah.
And that takes time, I'm constantly in a purification process. I do not think I've arrived. I'm not speaking from I'm a master. I am in progress. I've still got a body. And because I have a body, I'm still purifying all the qualities of traits of the past that's based on selfishness, positioning for power, all those things. I every day have to meet my own unconscious self and work with it to make a choice that's based on love. Every day. It's not like there's a place of arrival, because every day will bring new circumstances that it's not like, people think, oh, I'm so enlightened. I'm just like, that's bullshit. That's definitely bullshit. It's not. Every day we're going to have more situations to polish us.
Yeah. That was a lot to take in. I even forgot all of my questions. You talked a lot about working with couples to bring them in harmony.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to want to work? Yeah, to want to work with couples.
Thank you for asking this. I decided, it's not even decided, I've suddenly realized this is a deep level of responsibility. I have it because I have experienced the most sacred harmonic union that each person on this earth yearns for so deeply. And also because through my unconsciousness, I became this single parent of 4, not 1. And I see the damage when parents aren't in harmony or children grow up without fathers. And then the mother's trying to be present and mother and father. And that we have a massive dysfunction on this earth that is leading to a lot of drug addiction. It's a real big problem. Gaming addiction, sex addiction, every addiction possible. And everything, in esoteric psychology and all my study and awareness that's come is like, what would change the next 7 generations and bring a shift of consciousness on the earth is if somebody who's in a committed relationship could come into the most sacred, atomic, unified state, and that their lovemaking is a prayer, an offering to God, that they understand that it is sacred, that children are conceived consciously, with conscious conception, that the bodies are prepared for this, that men are not wasting their seed, and that lust is transformed into love. It's a commitment. Yeah. It's my deepest offering, and I pray that I can live long enough in this body to continue to do this. So in that way, I offer a couples sanctuary once a month. I've got it happening this weekend online. So people from all over the world can join. And that's 3 hours of being able to drop in, making time for us as a partner, you and your partner. And then as part of it, I get you to just be in candlelight or turn your cameras off and then sit in meditation with your partner opposite on a dining chair so that your backs are straight, and then to consciously harmonize with them. Consciously on an energetic and physical level to come into harmony. And that just bypasses all this, you're not in this situation. I really see the divinity in your relationship and I massively respect it. But most couples are not in that. There's all this, just positioning of power and dumping of the wounds of the mother-father stuff onto each other after that initial honeymoon attraction period. And I just really want to help couples. I love it. I love it. Taking a couple into that journey where because women are who desire sacredness in their physical, intimate interaction, don't dare to explain it. And because they can't anyway. And it's all about coming to divine purity within yourself and holding your partner in the most sacred light. Yeah, I'm really grateful that I get to do this work. I even have a couples retreat, which will be in Sri Lanka in February, by the way, if you're interested. Just look on my website because it's just very special.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
And thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you. Thank you. I really am grateful I am. Yeah.
And one more thing I wanted to also tap into is, how do you merge or integrate astrology with the work that you do?
Well, thank you. So I firstly want to explain my relationship to astrology. I'm not here to predict your future. Really important. I like to understand and support a person, understand what the tool set that they came in with. So the moment you take your first breath, in that moment, the way that the planets were, give you an imprint that affects how you are, how you think, Mercury, how you feel, the moon, what you love and enjoy, where Jupiter is, where Mars is how your ego, your life force energy is expressed. Where Saturn is where your karmic imprints, what you've come to learn to master that feels difficult. Where your sun is where you love to shine. It's a bit like that. And then once you look, and it's a map to understand a person's gifts and tool sets. And I use it to really help to empower a person to understand they're not crazy. This is what they have come to specialize in, understand, and master. And then you can look at the cycle, which is where the planets are now and what they're going through. So it really is a gate to help a person to understand themselves more.
Yeah.
Without predicting the future, because that's, as I say, co-creation with the creator. Yeah.
So it changes, right? The chart changes over time.
Yeah, the tool, like for instance, right now I've got Pluto on my Mercury in Aquarius, and it's showing me deep and, subconscious levels of the shadow, and it's strong, it's uncomfortable. It changes all the time.
Yeah. There's actually a question that just came in. So I just wanted to go back to the topic of space holding.
Yeah.
How do you manage to stay centered when, for example, I'm going through my own grief and my own fear? Like, how do you manage to not get into that?
Yeah. I do allow myself to feel you and where you are, or anybody in their grief, in the place that they want to, when it's uncomfortable to be with themselves. I feel like actually the quality that I bring to this is being a mum. Because if you think about this, when you've got a 2-year-old having a complete tantrum and just angry, or this teenager that's angry and blamey, a really, mother that can really hold space without making them wrong, gives them that hug and holds them. Not punish them. I'm not one of those mums to say, go and sit in your room. It's more like, come here, let me hold you. And so I'm working energetically like that, but I'm also, I'm there in prayer for them to this part that they cannot stand and that's so uncomfortable, that's making them squirm. because they've gone to that place, which is what they'd been avoiding for so long. I'm there to really help hold that space because I know their divinity and I know the perfection of their evolution. And, what I love to say to people is there is nothing outside the divine plan and the great perfection. Everything that we incarnated into, even however atrocious or violating it was exactly what our soul called to give us the fertile soil. Think of this entire life, this entire dreamscape simulation as the fertile soil to come into mastery. And all of it for the purpose to come back into our alignment with the source of creation and the magnificence of our own stainless purity. Our spirit, your spirit's different to your soul. Your spirit is the holiness of where you are at one with the Creator. This is the permanent atom where Creator creates you and fragments itself to have another experience. And that part of you is the unborn self, never died, never was born. It's immutable and it's vast and it's made of cosmic fire. And the ego is very frightened to allow itself to feel the spirit because then it doesn't run the show anymore. It cannot mask itself in its places of selfishness any longer. And so for spirit to come into alignment with this ego, the person has to go through the dark night of the soul, which can feel awful because it sees it's in remorse. So, of course, my work is to help people to do this now rather than wait till after death, where then you are going to feel like you're in a hell realm because you didn't meet yourself here. So it's so much better to be able to get to the point where you say, oh my God, I'm so sorry for my ridiculous levels of unconsciousness. The amount of times I've been on my knees to see that, and to my children and to anybody else that I've caused harm towards. Yeah, so how I hold that space is through compassion, through the power of prayer, and through my commitment to support a person to come in and find love to that they hate. Because that's what dissolves our separation.
Yeah.
Because that often is that we hate the self. Because we're seeing how we fell.
Yeah.
And by the way, big part of why I'm doing these space holder type trainings is I see how many people who put themselves into positions of power, holding space as facilitators in ceremonial work, fell really, and that their motivation isn't pure. And so I really want to help people who are taking positions of powers to really come into the place of humility, to know that we aren't the doer. Well, when we're working in these type of sacred ways, because the minute somebody thinks, oh, I'm such a good healer, that's a problem. Because that means that we're trying to take credit for God's love, God's gift of sharing the energy through us. Because honestly, anything good that's ever come through me is not me, Rita, the ego. It's me, Rita, the ego, getting out of the way of me so that this divinity can pour through me.
Yeah.
Even now, even this whole conversation, if I go into what do I look like and what do I sound like, then that's me, Rita, the ego. Me, I have to get out of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you stay in that humility, or how do you practice humility?
My 4 children definitely helped me. They would just always reflect back to me if I'm 1 degree off. Because in our house, they could say anything to me. Well, I didn't have control, actually. Like in some houses, nobody would dare to say these type of things to their mum. They definitely dare to say whatever they like. And in the end, it became humorous that I could laugh at myself.
Yeah.
So I laugh a lot because I see how ridiculous I am in my ego side of me. But my children, they have been my greatest teachers, all four of them in their different ways, by being very uncomfortable to show me my ego. And only now that they've grown up, they could really show me how much, that they love me and appreciate me. But they have let me know where I've been off.
Yeah.
That's a big part, really. I'm so grateful for that.
Were you in this work before you had children or after?
I had my Kundalini wake up 31 years ago. My oldest is 42. I began to wake up. I had shall I share with you my first experience of wake up? Like proper.
Yeah.
When I say proper, I mean, I've had many incredible things along the way. I've had an amazing life. Keep thinking I must do a book one day. Like being backstage at Bob Marley when I was so young, 15 years old.
Oh,
kind
really?
of like amazing. But there was a point where I was really in fear. I could feel that I was falling. I was kind of like really feeling like I'd lost my way. I was in my mid-20s. And I had I was trying to meditate. I say trying because it wasn't like I was rested in the natural state, but I was doing this effort to come really down and in and breathe and feel my connection to the divine. And I went to sleep one night and I realized I'm in some deep, profound dream, and this ancient woman was walking towards me. And I went, oh my God, you're my mother from the Pleiades. I never thought about the Pleiades. I didn't even know why I said those words. And I put my hands out to her. And as I look at my hands, I'm like, I'm looking at my hands in a dream. And she put her hands out. And that was the first time in this body of this life that I experienced like this thunderbolt of electric fire through my crown of my head, which is like the soul's energy. And I could only sustain it for something like a split second before waking up. And that just was like, wow. So then by the time I think I got to my late, like 29, 30, now I felt I'd really fallen. And now I was looking, and suddenly I came across a spiritual master. And this spiritual master taught the path of harmlessness and ageless wisdom. And very soon I came back, and actually it also aligned astrologically that I had Uranus and Neptune on my sun. I mean, that only means something to astrologers. But this now, I was in this doorway that was for 2 years where that one thin strand of electric fire that woke me up in that dream became a vastness of 200,000 volts of electric fire every day, opening me like all this energy coming from the center of the earth through me, shaking, opening in visions. It was intense and very purifying, because alongside that is then me seeing my shadow.
Yeah.
And but it was also like an anointing of paramount divinity, of me knowing my one with Creator Spirit. And that actually in that period, I started to really go through all these mudras and everything. And I'm glad that I'm speaking about this, because what I'm witnessing around the world, in every country that I work in, doesn't matter what the person's religion or belief system, loads of people are going through this right now. And I'm so grateful I can talk about this. I do. I've got other podcasts talking about Kundalini awakenings, because it's important to understand what it is and how sacred it is, and not to be frightened of it. And again, coming back to holding space, if you can be rested in absolute stillness when all this vastness of energy, which is your soul coming in, that's the point of our evolution, that your personality becomes a vessel for your soul so that you can radiate the light of tranquility on an embodied level through your soles of your feet to walk the earth and bring peace, to become an embodied peacekeeper on this earth. So that's, you know, I can't remember what the initial question was. So important that we aren't frightened of the fire of our soul. Yeah.
Would you mind if we close this episode with a prayer?
Of course. I would love to do that, Rashid. And just really, it's been beautiful. Thank you for giving me so much space to share inspiration.
Thank you for coming as well and being open to sharing.
So what I'm going to invite everybody, whilst I offer this prayer, I'm going to invite you for this moment to stand up. To sit up. And if you have your shoes on, just to take off your shoes so you can feel the ground underneath you. And to, in this moment, recognize that you're sitting on the lap of the Great Mother who loves you unconditionally. And to put your spine straight, to take a deep breath in through your nose, taking that breath in, connecting to the solar angel that's walked with you from the very beginning of time, that also loves you unconditionally. Breathing that light all the way to the base of your spine, to anchor yourself into the earth, to consciously open yourself, and then releasing the breath through the mouth. And just taking this minute just to feel the relationship at the crown of your head to the Father of all existence. From the point of light within the mind of existence, light streams forth into the minds of all mankind. Light illuminates this earth. From the point of love within the heart of existence, love streams forth into the hearts of all. I am you, you am I, we are one. From the center known as humanity, the plan of love and light is now made fully manifest. From the center known of humanity, we come to the light of peace within. Love, light, and wisdom now restores the balance on planet Earth, and so it is. May the light of Spirit shine upon us, upon all beings in all planes and all dimensions, now and forevermore, for the ultimate good of all. Om Shanti, 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 Om. Making this prayer in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, in the name of the Mother, the Soul, and the collective consciousness of humanity. Ahom Tak Wyasin. We're all related.